A little jittery late last week, but in my view, there's something more significant going on. There are now numerous triggers to a monetary reset and fiat devaluation in place that could send bullion to infinity in terms of price. And I think that that is the most significant thing about the petro yuan.
Definitely. And can you expand on that? What currently in the political situation is making that the case?
Well, first of all, we want to note that strongman Putin of Russia got reelected by a landslide. Okay, so Russia is now firmly nationalistic with a strongman leader, as it has been for quite some time. But what was really curious was what happened in China. In '82, China, I think, changed their laws to say no more dictators. They were tired of Mao. They didn't want that situation. These Chinese, they're no dummies, okay? And they understand about the evolution of power. But for some reason, they made him basically a dictator for life. And I sit back and I say, why would they do that? Because typically the Chinese leaders, after they step down, they stay in the background and help things. And my guess is that they perceive tremendous instability in markets and in their country. They want to have a leader who is in firm control and who has a very good relation with both Trump and Putin. And we have to take a look at that. Domestically, Trump has right now, I think, 18,500 sealed indictments good to go. He just signed off on the omnibus. He is now consolidating power within the White House. He's cleaning up the FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA, getting the deep staters out of there. Of course, eventually he'll have to go after the Senior Executive Service, the SES, and the Federal Reserve. These are the two main ways in which the globalists penetrate and corrupt the federal government. So Trump is consolidating power. With the omnibus discretionary spending, he could very easily build his wall in a heartbeat. When those 18,500 sealed indictments go out, he's going to take down a lot of Democrat operatives. He's going to do two things concurrently. He's going to rally his American first base in building that wall, and he will obliterate the Democrats, in my view, which means that come 2020, he's looking at a supermajority. That is a very strongman position within the United States. Now, and so what's happening here is we've got China, Russia, and the U.S. kind of coming together as strong nationalistic forces. But the next question is, why? And if I may, Elijah, may I go into the bullion aspect of a potential monetary reset?
Definitely.
Yes. We all know that China and Russia have been buying gold hand over fist.
Right.
Russia is going to monetize silver. They're actually going to produce a silver coin and sit there and say, why would they do this? Think back to the instability in China. Think back about the globalists and the central bankers being basically tied to the hip. Now, I want you to connect another dot. You may recall, I don't know, I think it was about a month and a half ago, the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin showed up at Fort Knox, and he comes out waving a gold bar. I think Trump is a little smarter than the average bear. I suspect that Trump, in fulfilling a campaign promise about auditing the Fed, he verified first for himself that the U.S. 8,000-ton gold hoard was there. He would not have sent Mnuchin to Knox to wave a gold bar unless he was confident that that gold was there. So I have to apologize for the GATA folks. I think you're wrong. I think they really do have the gold there. So what we have now is China hoarding gold, petro yuan. We've got Russia hoarding gold, monetizing silver, and we have an indirect verification that the U.S. gold hoard is there. And so now what we have are three strongly nationalist countries with strongman leaders, and Trump is a bold leader. Trust me on this. And that ties into for what purpose? Now we have to think about Kai in Florida, China and Trump coming out smiling. All of a sudden now North Korea coming to the peace table. Okay. I'm not a big believer in coincidence, but I try to connect the dots from outside of it. Trump goes to China and he practically gets a hero's welcome in Beijing. I mean, an honor bestowed upon a foreign leader that's unheard of into the sacred city. I mean, that was huge. And I'm sitting absolutely floored saying, what's going on here? So I then think in terms of the three nationalists back with bullion going up against the Fiat central bankers, the EU, and the New World Order. Now we have to talk in terms of how does he take down the central bankers and their fiat money and the money that is used to buy influence. And so I look at how can they possibly do that, okay? And if you would like me to continue, Elijah, I can discuss the triggers that I think are now pending.
Right, because some of those triggers, if you wanted to expand on just a couple of them, the trade war that's going on right now, as you talk about Russia trying to institute silver into their monetary system and Fed interest rates increasing. Can you expand a little bit on those?
Well, the monetization of silver to me is a defensive preparation in advance of a fiat currency meltdown. Okay, to be prepared. Now, I believe that there are right now 7 potential triggers to a fiat meltdown, and they are the trade wars, interest rates, federal deficits, the petro yuan, treasuries and forex reserves, a Fed audit, and a derivative contagion. Those are 7. They're all heavy. They're all are significant. And Trump, Putin, and Kai could trip any one of them and just crash the global fiat system. Okay. Now, I think, would you like me to first talk about the trade war?
Yeah, the trade wars would be great. I mean, we've heard a lot in the news recently about China and the U.S., the trade war between them, Trump implementing tariffs also on steel and aluminum. So, yeah, if you can expand on that, that would be great.
Right. I always love to describe patty cake amongst world leaders. Trump fired off the steel aluminum tariff. Now, you don't do that with the guy who gives you the greatest honor possible from China, okay? These guys already knew what was going down, okay? Now, China, if you understand Eastern culture, they have to save face. So they have to come back and retaliate to save face. Okay, that's given. And so I think they put a tariff on U.S. garbage imports or something like that. Okay, so there's a little patty cake going on, and it's kissy and it's really nice. Then China is going to send over its delegation and try to end the Cold War, the trade war. So they set the stage for it, but it ain't going full on, not yet. They're going to trigger it when they want to trigger it for their purposes. Again, think back, EU, New World Order, globalists. So we have China pushing the strings on NOCO. You know, all indications is that there's going to be a peace deal, monumental peace deal come May. And I anticipate seeing of North Korea and Putin shaking hands and U.S. pulling their troops out of South Korea. the peninsula unified after what, 60 years? I mean, this is huge stuff. And I think it's because Trump is a strategic player. He gets back and he starts moving in advance before things comes out. You know, when he entered the White House, it was a rat's nest with all of these deep staters who were bound and determined to corrupt and push the globalist agenda. And he is slowly taking them out. That Inspector General report, which I don't think has been disclosed yet, has given him the ammunition. And he's taken them out one by one. He just recently appointed Bolton, who I consider the junkyard dog in the NSA, and he will go at deep staters and leakers big time. And Trump will keep them on a leash. Trump is not interested in war. Those who are worried about Bolton being at that position, I think don't see what is really happening. Bolton will be a Trump loyalist, and he will clean house for Trump to make sure that everybody's on the same team. So I see Trump moving to consolidate power, sweep in 2020, super majorities in both houses, okay? And with that, and in connection with Kai and Putin, take down the global bankers. Are they going to do it now? I don't know. I can't tell you. Are they going to do it this summer? I don't know. But any one of these triggers, trade war, interest rates, you know, they've already indicated they're going to be raising them 3 times this year. Federal deficits make the markets really shaky. They could collapse in a heartbeat because it's really been puffed up by easy money. You know, we could have a situation where Fiat's collapsing in a Weimar Republic scenario where the stock market actually goes up exponential, but in value, it dives and it tanks. And of course, China and as well as Russia are sitting there with a large amount of treasuries. And Trump could give them the call and say, okay, dump them now. Okay, he's got Muchin online to get that easy money out there. He's got Powell online to all of a sudden bring those interest rates. I mean, he can play it a lot of different ways. Another thing is this Fed audit. Now, my suspicion is that there's about 21 trillion in dark pool money that the Fed and the Exchange Stabilization Fund has been using to rig off markets, bail out the EU banks. You might remember TARP. You might remember Rumsfeld coming out and saying, where did my 1.6 trillion million go? I mean, how do you lose 1.6 million, dollars? I mean, you don't, okay? And then all of a sudden they shut him up. He said, look, we got to maintain the system and all of that. Now, Deutsche Bank, watch Deutsche Bank stock, okay? I think they are insolvent. They're sitting at the precipice. If they go, $1,000 trillion of derivatives blow up, and all the central banks and big banks go down in a heartbeat. So these 3 amigos, Putin, Kai, Trump, they're dealing with 7 aces, okay? And I think that the New World Order and the globalists are totally outmatched. I believe the 3 amigos are holding all the cards, and it's timing. When are they going to do it? I can't tell you that. But this summer looks really scary, and I'm thinking in terms of them expanding Gitmo. They put the U.S. Marine Corps on alert. They got 18,500 SEAL indictments, and a lot of these are going to be Democrats perp-walked for corruption. So I think the stage is set. And so I would ask your viewers, heads up. Summer could be really, really dicey.
Now, with respect to when we go back into this monetary system that is based on bullion, what do you see happening to the prices of precious metals?
Oh, they go infinite. I mean, the dollar goes to zero. It goes off the boards. And, 1 divided by 0 is infinity. Okay. Now, again, there would be weeks, maybe a couple of months involved. When it goes down, it'll go down hard. And so, and this all gets back to my strategies for eliminating the national debt. And it does have to do with trashing the fiat currency as a means to implement a debt jubilee, so as to eliminate the national debt, all of our state debts, okay, and a great deal of private debts. In other words, it's a debt jubilee based upon the destruction of the fiat dollar.
Now, with respect to like the average person, what happens to them and their savings? It seems like this just completely wipes us like clean.
Oh, if you are in dollar-denominated assets and you don't see things happening, you could get hurt very badly. Now, this debt jubilee that I'm talking about is a staggered step process, okay? And if it hits you in your asset class at the time implemented, you could get totally wiped out. Now, the last time we talked, Elijah, I talked in terms of what the little guy could do. If you may, I'd like to talk to the millennials for a second, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah. Us older guys, we've already lived our good years. It ain't about me. It's about them. It's about those guys in their 20s. Job market ain't there with high-paying wages. Home prices are totally out of sight. I mean, what hope do they have to buy a home, start a family, and live the American dream? And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what can they do? Well, back in the Depression time, okay, things got pretty dicey. 5 ounces of gold bought you a brand new home. And so I'd sit there and I'd say to those millennials, maybe they have a job, maybe they save some money. And I'd sit there and I'd say, things could get really dicey really quick. If you can afford it, call up those SD bullion guys. They're good, honest people. They give you a fair price. Pick up either, say, 5 gold coins or a monster box of silver. Tuck it away. I mean, gold is easier to store. Silver has the potential of outperforming, because when this happens, we're going to be looking at a gold-silver ratio around 10, which means that silver would explode relative. Now, how that works is generally the gold will take off because of instability. It'll start to rise. And it'll drag silver along. As soon as the market perceives that this is a real bull move, silver whiplashes and screams higher forward. And that's when that ratio will come down. So to the millennials, I feel for you. This is your time. You're at your best years. I want you to have a chance at the American dream. Get yourself 5 gold coins or a monster box of silver. Put it away. Things could get dicey this summer. And at the end of the day, you too can live the American dream.
Now, before we let you go, Derek, I was interested in just kind of segueing into a slightly different topic. You have talked about this before, but it's the topic of wars and where you see war going in the future, involving, for example, the wars with Ukraine, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan. What do you see happening, and how does this affect the average person?
Trump is not a warmonger. Blessed is the peacemaker. There's a lot of posturing in terms of Trump making his military strong, and Russia with their high-speed missiles, and China with their fighters. It's posturing, okay? All three want to have a strong defense, but none of them want to use it. They don't want war. So try to relax about that. Now, the Ukraine situation really followed, I think, the Syrian situation. This is all driven by the globalizers. They feed on chaos and war. They had puppet Hillary Clinton in their pocket. She takes out Gaddafi in Libya, who was going to go to a gold denarii, I think they call it. Then from that staging ground, runs guns into Syria. Why? Because Putin is the bad guy. He's the nationalist. Okay? Now, if you want to globalize, you got to take them out, or you got to minimize them. So they wanted to run Gulf oil through Syria up to the Mediterranean to compete with Russia. That's what Syria is all about. Okay? It's all about the globalists trying to take down Putin. Now, that fed into the Ukraine situation. Now, yeah, they sell it as the Ukrainian nationalists versus the ethnic Russians. That's the storyline. The real truth is that Russia had, and I think still has, huge pipelines running from Russia into the Eastern Europeans. If they could turn Ukraine, they could knock out that oil. And that's why Russia, protecting itself, going through the South Stream through Turkey. And they also have the North Stream into Germany through the Baltic Sea. So Putin is seeing what's happening. I mean, you know, after the Cold Deal, it was basically, okay, here's Russia, there's Western Europe. Let's keep Eastern Europe neutral. That was basically the peace agreement. Warmonger Hillary Rodham Clinton sold herself out to the devils, the globalists, and went in there and caused war. I mean, did you ever hear once say, we should respect democracy principles and not out the duly elected president at gunpoint? We should have a civil impeachment trial because we believe in democracy. You didn't hear that at all. You didn't hear it from Senator Feinstein. You didn't hear it from anybody that's in the pockets of the globalists. They were after Russia. Now, I suspect what happened is that, you know, Ukraine made an effort to, during the election campaign there, I'm talking about the Eastern Ukrainian, the one that was out of, and he says, well, yeah, you know, maybe joining the European Union would be good for our business. And Putin, you know, backdoors comes in and says, hey, you know, let me offer you a better deal. And the Eastern Ukrainian president says, you know, hey, we're going to get cheap gas from Russia. You know, that's going to help our economy. They're close. You know, we got no dog in the hunt. Yeah, sure. Let's stay with Russia. That didn't fly. He was out in a minute. And that's Hillary Rodham Clinton. And what happened was a fiasco, civil war, death, destruction. I mean, I'm just appalled at it. You know, Obama running in Panzer tanks into Poland, threatening nuclear war. But Putin comes back, you know, counter threats, takes Crimea, and that is part of Russian culture. I've been there 10 times. I understand their mentality. They are territorialists. I mean, you know, you give them a chance to snatch some property, they're going to do it. That's, you know, that culture goes all the way back to Peter the Great. So you got to understand the Russians. And Hillary Rodham Clinton just basically gave Putin Crimea on a silver platter. I mean, you talk about an absolute blunder. Why? Because she was getting loads of money through her crime syndicate called the Charity Foundation. She's getting rich, billions of dollars. I mean, as far as I can tell. Now, again, you have to understand, I am not in the back rooms. You know, they don't invite me to their secret little meetings. So I can only give you all my best guess in connecting the dots. So I can't really confirm any of this. It's just that, you know, I've been studying it hard for 20 years. This is my conclusion. You know, consider it for, you know, for what it's worth, you know. It's just one man's opinion. I could be right. Now, so that's basically your Libya, Syria, Ukraine wars. Afghanistan, that is purely a banker's play to launder drug money and feed off addicting people around the world. Okay. Yeah, there's a little bit of the Shia Sunni competition going on in there. The Shia would love to take over the drug trade for the money, of course. They're not going to tell you this, but that's the story of Afghanistan. Now, Yemen is pretty interesting. We must remember that the Arabian Peninsula, it's I believe, a contiguous landmass having the same strata. And there's a lot of oil in Saudi Arabia. That suggests that there should also be a lot of oil in Yemen. That has not been confirmed. I suspect that it's being considered quietly under the table, but it's also on its surface a very typical Shia Sunni contest. And you've got the Iranians basically supporting the, I think they call them the Duty and the Saudis with the nationalists there. And so that's kind of a proxy war. If someone's going to defend their civil liberties, I don't have problems arming them. Last thing I want to see is the U.S. actively engaged, going in there and killing people and blowing it up. I mean, we're a better people than causing wars and death and destruction. I'd like to see, the complete ban on droning. I mean, unless they've got clear-cut intel that there's a threat to the United States, I'd like to see it. I don't think that Trump is a warmonger. I think he really wants to create peace around the world and make America great. Now, I'm a libertarian, but I'm also an objective individual. And I'm going to give, someone their due respect. Trump's, he's cut some taxes, he's deregulated, he's got us out of the TPP and the Paris Accord. These are kinds of things that us libertarians like. I don't really am excited about him building a wall and scarring our land here in California. So I don't agree with everything that he wants to do. These immigrants hiding in the shadows, I got a lot of sympathy for them. I don't want to see them getting brutalized. So I don't agree with Trump 100% or the American First hardcore right people, but let's give credit where credit is due. And I think Trump is doing a pretty good job.
All right. Well, Derek Michael Reed, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers any last thoughts you had and where they can find you online?
Sure. I am a Christian and I prefer living very, very poorly.